Welcome, viewers, to the Smash News Network, Least Busted Name in News. I'm your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash. And today we've got most of the activity in the southern hemisphere of the closest star. We'll tell you all about it. We'll also cover some new sunspots. So we've got some new sunspots. We've got Sunspot 3008. There's also a new one in the northern hemisphere. Again, we'll get to it. We've also recently seen an uptick in the solar wind density. Let's check that out next. So here's the density over the past 4 hours. You can see it's very low here. Low density shown in white, high density shown in blue. And this is the geospace magnetosphere movie over the last 4 hours. And you can see that higher density coming in, seeding the magnetosphere with additional plasma, creating sort of a protective bubble around the Earth. That's about to 12 Earth diameters there. The plasma density surrounding planet Earth. So here it is from the perspective of pressure. That was protons per cubic centimeter. This is nanopascals magnetohydrodynamic pressure, and you'll see some higher pressure forming here as a result of a higher density solar wind regime showing up at the geospace. You can see some plasma creeping in, and then the pressure will increase quite precipitously there. Again, that's the last 4 hours of the geospace from space, Earth's magnetosphere. Here's Earth's geospace from the ground level, geospace delta B, showing nanotesla here. Earth's magnetic moment from the ground, we showed you it from space. Here it is from the ground. You'll see a minor uptick here in Earth's B field. Geospace delta B changes to Earth's B field is what's depicted here. Again, that's like the last two frames, the last 4 hours. Planetary K index at 1. The KP index, the Planetary K index, a measurement of global geomagnetism. If you want to read about it, just click details on the Planetary K index page. It's part of the Space Weather Prediction Center. A lot of great data there for all of our spaced out viewers. And we'll talk about the solar wind here in slightly in more depth than we have in recent videos. Here's a little bit of higher density showing up. Could be a weak coronal hole wind stream. It's made it up to just under 11 protons per cubic centimeter. There's a reading of 10.73. It's now subsided a little bit. Now it's down to 5.2 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind speed quite low here. Quite low and quite slow at 332 kilometers a second. A little more about the solar wind. If you've never heard of the solar wind, it was first theorized, at least in writing, by Eugene Parker in 1958. And it wasn't really verified until 1959 when Konstantin Gringaus flew some, quote, ion traps, end quotes, on some Soviet Lunik 2 and 3 missions, which sort of measured the solar wind. It wasn't really truly verified until 1962 when Mariner 2 flew toward Venus and discovered that there were some high and low speed regimes. The high speed regimes were figured out to be from coronal holes during 1973 and 1974 during Skylab. If you want to read about that, just do a search for solar wind history. You'll find this great page. You can read a little bit more about that if you like. We won't spend too much time on it because it's the daily space weather. Next, going into magnetic data, we see a divergence here. We see the GOES 16 seeing higher readings and the GOES 17 seeing lower readings around the same time there. Keep in mind they're at slightly different locations, as these M's represent midnight local time for the satellites. Anyway, that's your GOES magnetometers over the past 3 days. Earth is in a North Pole current sheet, as you can see here in the top view ecliptic plane field plot. North Pole current sheet shown in green, South Pole shown in red. Nothing to write home about there. Most of the activity in the southern hemisphere, although we do have a new sunspot group, and a significant uptick in the likelihood of major flares. There's the line of sight ecliptic plane field plot. It also shows the solar magnetogram. We'll get to sunspots in a minute. First, coronal holes. And we see some well-defined trans-equatorial ones rotating in here in the northeast. We can expect a high-speed wind from those in about 5 or 6 days. So here's a view of the closest star in 193 angstroms. And these coronal holes over here are going to become much more well defined in the coming days. The corona is very bumpy, and plasma blocks our view of those low plasma areas. Coronal holes are interesting, folks, in that they are like a low pressure zone. The thing about low pressure zones on stars is that they are so low that there are protons blasting out of them at high speeds. Coronal holes, the source of high-speed coronal hole wind streams. Next, moving to sunspots, we've got some new groups. Sunspot 3007 up here, Sunspot 3008 down here. They're both beta-gamma class sunspot groups, so they're significantly increasing the likelihood of major solar flares, as is 3004 as it approaches the limb. Yeah, solar flares, they're more likely around the limbs. It's pretty much a fact nowadays, and I won't get into it at the moment. I will show you some views. Sunspot 3004 is quite huge. You can see it's way larger than the Earth. I'd say about 2 Earths could fit inside of that umbra. And you can see the rapid formation of Sunspot 3007, and down here Sunspot 3008 rising. They are both beta-gamma class sunspot groups. Again, the likelihood of solar flares way higher as a result of those three things, those two new sunspots and 3004 approaching the limb. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to press like and subscribe. Thanks to all of our longtime viewers. So the channel's been around making daily space weather videos for like 5 years now. And yeah, it's been quite an interesting trip, because well, when it comes to science, we often discover that we're not getting answers to questions asked, but instead receiving answers to questions not asked, and receiving more questions than answers. So that's just the way it works, folks. Once again, thanks everybody on YouTube for tuning in. This has been a YouTube exclusive. Thanks to Henry and Al. Also, make sure you go subscribe to Mr. Keebler, the ukulele experts. We're also on Twitter, if you haven't noticed. If you haven't got a Twitter account, I don't know what to tell you. It's not fixed. Here's what our respondent said with respect to whether or not Twitter's fixed. When asked, we think it's hilarious that we've got 250 followers, and the idea that Elon Musk is some sort of savior for free speech is similarly humorous. What do you think? Twitter is the same, or Twitter is, quote, fixed? Turns out 92.9% of respondents think Twitter is the same, as it promotes ultra-rich celebrities and other already famous people and suppresses facts and small businesses. Next, I'd like to say Universum Liberate, because if I could wave my magic wand, I would set everybody free. So, once again, Universum Liberate. It is the motto of the Galactic Federation Special Forces. Space is big, and there are a lot of big entities concerned with your freedom and your liberty. So, Universum Liberate, tell your friends and foes, start a conversation by picking up a shirt with the motto of the Galactic Federation Special Forces. All proceeds go to help us continue to create these videos, so give Smash staff a raise, as she is a partner in the operation. Thanks to our BitChute subscribers as well, bitchute.com/smashamash. Daily content exclusively showing up there as well. Also, daily content exclusively showing up on Twitch. By the time you saw this video on YouTube, there would have been 2 Twitch live streams already. Once again, thanks to our Twitch followers. Twitch.tv/smashamash. If you want to support the content, become a member of the Smash team. We can even show you this post. This is one of our great features of smashamash.com/smash team, our image comparison feature. So talking about new sunspots, it's great to view them in intensitygram and colorized magnetogram. There's Sunspot 3007 and 3004 and 3001, and there's 3006 and there's 3008. Yeah, I somehow memorized them all today. You can find links to our social media as well on smashamash.com/smash team, as well as on our homepage. So welcome to the Near Renaissance. Our Patreon is still there. It is still available. Once again, give Smash staff a raise by picking up some merch, donating to us via becoming a member of the Smash team, etc. Gold and silver members receive additional content. Gold annual paid-up subscribers receive complimentary merch. And everybody at the gold level can get a at smashamash.com email address. It's feature rich. And let's not go data poor and get into the GOES proton flux. It's flatlined here, and the likelihood of seeing a spike in this is much higher as we see the likelihood of solar flares going way up. We saw a large C-class flare in the past 24 hours. Let's take a look at it visually through the 94 angstroms wavelength from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. And I think that C-class flare came out of this new sunspot here, Sunspot 3008, and we've got some activity rising in the northeast as well. You can see some brightening happening up here. Could be a new sunspot forming, could be a new sunspot rising, or perhaps even both. Again, the likelihood of solar flares has gone way up with the current environment. So if you're up before dawn, you may see a great planetary pileup. Saturn, Mars, Jupiter, and Venus all rising ahead of the sun. Mercury rising behind the sun. It's now become an evening star. Mercury. An evening planet, rather. And our star chart includes the ecliptic, the yellow line, the sun, the path the sun will take across the sky. The blue line is the galactic plane. That's in-the-sky.org's all sky chart. If you want to make your own, put in your zip code and have at it. Here's a solar system forecast for the next week. Here's where we'll be in a week. Mercury swinging around. Full moon approaching. We've got some coronagraph imagery as well. Stereo A, showing us indeed the coronal mass ejection that we forecasted. It's becoming a long-duration coronal mass ejection here, so you can see quite a slow CME happening, a bit stealthy actually. And if you look on the SOHO-LASCO C2, which is located here at Lagrangian point 1, we're expecting it to miss Earth to the northwest. So there is some ejecta also about to erupt from the far side of the sun. For you new viewers, from Stereo A's perspective, Earth is off in this direction. Going back to our diagram here, Stereo A is located at Lagrangian point 5. Excuse me, and that's where we'll close out today's space weather video. The CME that we forecasted a couple of days ago is indeed now ejecting. So no real surprise to our regular viewers. Thanks for tuning in to the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. As I sign off, may that solar wind be at your back.